Hello, and welcome to the Wine Podcast from JaneAnson.com.
At the end of the day, of course, we can say, you are Cheval Blanc, you can. I just answer, because we can, we must. If all the people in the world who can change the world try to change it, it's quite good news for all of us.
Hello, and welcome to our podcast. This is Suzanne Desbois. In this series, we're meeting people in the wine world who are daring us to envision a different, better future and taking those first hard steps to lead us there. Today, I'm in Bordeaux on the right bank at the legendary Château Cheval Blanc in St Emilion. In 2021, the then technical director, now general manager of the estate, Pierre-Olivier Clouet, announced by way of an elegantly bound, illustrated 45-page manifesto that a transformation was not only underway, it had been fast-tracked. The manifesto's subtitle, Promoting Anti-Conventional Viticulture, caught my attention. These are people eschewing the way we have been growing wine grapes and other crops for decades, a way of growing things that has led to a dependence on mineral fertilizers and chemical pesticides in order to secure crop yields. So while conventional farming originally seemed like a good thing, it helped rid us of famine, for one. It's led to soil that's lost its natural fertility. We've suffered a loss of biodiversity and deforestation, and it's led to significant greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, it's left us vulnerable. We now know we have to rethink how we farm. But what's the answer? Let's hear about what's underway at Cheval Blanc. Thank you for joining us. So what is the vision, the ambition behind this manifesto and Cheval Blanc's new agricultural model?
So to make it simple, we can say that in Cheval Blanc, we consider that agriculture, by the way, viticulture as well, is not a problem in the world of tomorrow. We consider that this is a solution for the world of tomorrow. Why a solution? Because we consider that this is a solution to multiply biodiversity, to trap carbon, to preserve water resource, to nourish the world in a way. So we want that all the society have a different view of what agriculture can bring to the world. And why a manifesto? A manifesto because we consider that before to do, we need to know, we need to understand, we need to convince, we need to share our conviction to transform our think in act.
Terrific. So is this philosophy or science?
Science, for sure science. The core of our approach is science. But in a certain way, we can consider that there is a touch of philosophy, a touch of vision, a touch of conviction. Even if the core of our approach is science, when you want to accelerate, when you want to scale the system, the project, the model you want, you need to have a vision. So a vision and a conviction to begin, and science and agronomy to develop. This is a sum up of our approach of agroecology.
Okay, terrific. So when I was reading the manifesto, I saw that there are 3 pillars to the agroecology model: agroforestry, vegetation cover, and polyculture. And that might sound simple, but of course we know it's incredibly complex. So let's start with agroforestry and explain the way that our listeners who might not know much about it can understand. So tell us what that means in practical terms here at Cheval Blanc and why the trees are so important.
This is super important to start from the beginning. Agroforestry is a trendy word. So as all the trendy word, we need to explain and to go back to the bases. Everybody keep the part forest of the word agroforestry to imagine what it could be. I prefer to keep the other part of the word, which is agro. We consider that agroforestry is clearly a tool to produce. Agroforestry is a tool to fertilize, a tool to host biodiversity, insect, bird, bat, a tool to decrease the pressure in the vineyard, a tool to trap carbon, a tool to protect the water resource. In fact, we consider that agroforestry is more or less, the tree is more or less the oldest friend of farmer. So we forget that, unfortunately, after the Second World War, but for millions of years, all the farming system in the world was based in the relationship between the field and the tree.
So that's really interesting. So the trees are part of an integrated model. So they're housing the predators that might get rid of your pests for you, for instance. You know, they're helping with biodiversity. They're providing shade when the sun is hot. They're connecting to an underground network, delivering water and nutrients. But can you plant any kind of tree?
Yes, we can plant any kind of trees, but not everywhere. So if we go back to the fact that the trees should be considered as tools, we don't all use the same tools everywhere in the world. So if you work with animal husbandry, if you are a wine grower, if you have a vegetable market, you don't need the same tools. But in the tree situation, you need to work with living soils. So I consider that, and we have a super nice illustration of that. We develop agroforestry and living soils everywhere we make wine. So of course at Cheval Blanc, but as well in Cheval des Andes in Mendoza in Argentina. And the trees that we planted in Argentina are not the same as the trees that we planted here in St Emilion. So here in St Emilion, we decided to spray the type of trees that we use in two categories, the fruit trees and the forest trees. We use trees around the parcel with edges, but as well into the parcels. If we need the tree to help the main culture of the vines, we need to put the trees in the middle of the parcel. So we planted 80 trees per hectare, 40 fruit tree, apricot, apple, pear, peach, cherry, almond, and 40 forest tree, linden, maple, beech, rowan. I'm sorry for my English. So a different category of tree. But they all work with the same concept. We let the tree grow for 2 or 3 years and we prune it severely to use the carbon to let going back to the soil.
So you're pruning it because you're going to take the offshoots and put on the ground and that degrade? Or is it because you need the tree to have a burst of growth after the pruning?
The first thing, we want to have a kind of going back to the soil to deliver carbon and all the nutrients that is stuck in the wood.
So then it becomes part of that regenerative cycle.
Exactly.
Correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
In fact, it's work like in a forest. A forest grow up alone. If you let a piece of land, 30 years after, it's a forest. And nobody enter in this forest. No farmer, no tractors, no pesticides, no mineral fertilizer, nothing. The nature do it itself with sun, CO2 and water. The photosynthesis is the most impressive machine that was created in the world. We transform CO2, sun and water into organic matter and into life.
So we know now that the trees and other plants are connected to a vast underground mycorrhizal network. The tiny threads of mycelium that transfer water, nitrogen, carbon, and other minerals. A healthy soil is alive with thousands of kinds of bacteria and living organisms like earthworms. So I'm curious how this connects to wine. Tell me, do you think this underground network has an impact on the vines to the extent that it influences the qualities of the grapes produced by the vines?
So to begin, we had to say once again that mycelium and mycelium network is absolutely the most important pillar of living soils. So the mycelium live around the roots of the trees and share with the roots of the vines and the roots of the cover crops. So it's a network that link all the plants together. So probably you read, like a lot of us, some studies, some book about the exchange in between the different trees in a forest, the connection with the mycelium, and the trees exchange information, emotion, signal, and things like that. I'm not a researcher. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I don't know. I'm a farmer. What I know is the fact that they exchange water and nutriment. This is clearly enough for a vigneron like me. So to answer precisely your question about is there any change in the way the vine grow? Yes, there is a change in the way the vines grow. We have a vigor in the vineyard, which impresses a lot. We had much less fertilization in the vineyard to maintain a certain growing. So the fertilization is doing by the mycelium and the life in the soils itself. So in fact, we try to abandonate fertilization to build the fertility of our soils. And to answer the question, is there any impact on the grapes? Of course, I can't answer that question. It's a long-term question. But I'm sure about one thing. If we don't change, Cheval Blanc will completely change in 50 years. So we change the recipe. We change the methods of the vineyard management to preserve Cheval Blanc from the excess of the climatic conditions that will happen in few months, in few years.
So let's talk about the vegetation cover, the second pillar of the agroecology model. Those are the plants that grow between the rows of vines. In the past, farmers tilled the soil and used weed killer to get rid of them. And we thought that was a good thing to do. So what do you think we should be doing?
So concerning the vegetation cover, this is probably the easiest part of our methods to adapt everywhere in the world, even in the vineyard. This is a very simple observation. Working the soil is killing it everywhere in the world. You can be on the market field, on the vegetable market field, you can be in animal husbandry, you can produce some fruit, you can produce some wines or whatever. Everywhere you plow the soil, you destroy it. So we consider in Cheval Blanc that two of the biggest enemies of agriculture in the last 200 years are monoculture and plowing. So we use cover crops to protect the soil of the plowing. So vegetation cover is not to let the natural grass growing on the soil. We seed the soil at the end of the picking, and we let the cover crop growing during the winter. When the vines sleep, the cover crop can take the nutriment, can take the water to grow. And when the bud breaking of the vines happen in the spring, we roll that cover crop to produce a skin to the soil. We produce a cover, a cap to protect the soil from the excess of the temperature, to protect the soil of the dry situation, to bring a certain humidity and moisture in the soil. This is the same effect than the skin you have on your body. So naked soil is a nightmare for biodiversity, and as well the consequences is the same everywhere in the world. When you plow the soil, you have erosion, and you lose the black gold of the soil, which is organic matter. So our treasure is the organic matter that we have in the soil, and we had to protect it, we had to preserve it, but more importantly, we had to produce it.
So in May, you've flattened all these plants down to create sort of a living straw mat, correct?
Exactly.
Something like that. So what kind of plants are you seeding there?
So we decided to use 5 different seeds, 5 different plants, radish, clover, mustard, wheat, and rye. But for sure, this is like the trees. Everywhere in the world, you can use different plants. It's like a tool, once again, that you have in your toolbox. What you expect from each plant. We expect the radish to decompact the soil. We expect the clover to bring nitrogen into the soil. We expect the wheat and the rye to cover correctly the soils when the plants are dry in the summer. So once again, why we explain that this is science? Because we consider that we know how to measure, how to choose each different plant. 50 years ago, a lot of agronomists have in the toolbox chemicals, pesticides, organic fertilizer. What we put in our toolbox is clover, trees, earthworm, but as well we measure and we know what we do. We just change the tools.
Is not just in the vineyards that you're reestablishing biodiversity at Cheval Blanc. The third pillar of the agroecology model is polyculture, a move away from monoculture where we cultivate a single crop. So you've created a farm across the road, La Ferme de la Tour du Pin. So can you tell us about that, what you're growing, what you're doing there?
Exactly. The 3 pillars are cover crop, agroforestry, and polyculture, which is probably the most difficult point to explain from outside. So we consider that our vision of the agriculture is to build an agricultural organism. We think with an holistic approach of our job. So we consider that everywhere you grow together different plants, everywhere you raise together different animals, everywhere you grow plants and raise animals together, you decrease the pressure. You take different nutriment from the soil. So we consider that it's a way to fight to decrease the impact of the monoculture. So first, we grow and raise things in our parcel of vines, because this is our recipe to produce Cheval Blanc, to produce wines, to manage the vineyard. But as well, we want to bring something to our community. We want to bring something to our territory. So we want to nourish our community, our employees, our guests, the people who turn around us. So that's the reason why we decided to start more than 15 years ago an enormous vegetable garden to produce some vegetable, fruit, and produce for our guests. And 2 years ago, we decided to scale this approach, building a vegetable market with 6 employees full-time, with 50 tons of vegetable that we sell to our community.
So wait, that's 50 tons of vegetables a year?
Yeah, this is enormous.
Enormous.
We can nourish more than 500 family.
And you're selling it in the local farmers market?
Yes, in fact, we have a different cycle to sell our product or produce. First, the first client is the chateau. So our guest, our client, the people who come to the chateau to share our passion of wine and to enjoy our wines. The second circle, which is an important one, is our employees. We believe that before to earn money with its produce, a farm had to nourish the people who work on. It was like that for many, many, many centuries. So we go back to the roots, nourishing the people who work with and for us. So we produce some baskets with different kind of vegetable in it. We produce more than 60 different kind of vegetable per year in that farm. And every week, each employee can have a basket for 1, 2, or 5 people, depending on the size of his family.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Then we have a market, a market at La Ferme de la Tour du Pin, and we have a market in the small town of St Emilion. Then we sell our vegetable to the local restaurant around us, and to finish, we sell to public school because once again, our target, our goal, our vision is what can we bring back to our community, to our territory. Cheval Blanc have a duty. Cheval Blanc had to bring back a part of what we earn internationally. We are well known. We produce a spectacular wine because on the label of Cheval Blanc, this is right, Cheval Blanc, but as well St Emilion. So we want to do something for our own territory. There is not a lot of things that we know how to produce. We are farmer. We know to produce things that come from agriculture. So what we can bring to our community is a certain quality of vegetable and fruit to nourish correctly the people who are around us.
Okay, so that's really fascinating and admirable. It's not just vegetable and fruit you're growing here. You're also raising animals. And I think that ties into fertilizing the land as well. So you've got, what kind of animals do you have here?
Hello, we have different kind of animals in our animals husbandry. We have sheep, chicken, pork, bees. The role of each is different. The first thing after nourishing the people who work here is to nourish our soils, to nourish the soil in the winter through the fertilization that they deliver to us. So each parcel of Cheval Blanc, each 56 parcels of Cheval Blanc will receive the visit of our animals minimum once per year. Could be the sheep in the winter to maintain our vegetation cover at the right level. Could be the chicken in a small
those little mobile cages they have.
Exactly, yeah. Mobile cages that travel into the vineyard to fertilize. So we believe that each parcel of Cheval Blanc need to have an animal footprint every year, because as well it's a way to diversify the microbiome of the soils. Everybody talk about the microbiota and of the human body. We had to talk about the microbiota of the soil.
Okay, so sort of like the gut, and you think of the land, you think of the soil as the gut for vegetation, I believe, exactly. Right? So this connects to a traditional practice we spoke about recently when you mentioned the transhumance, how shepherds used to move their flocks of sheep from the mountains where they grazed in the summer to the milder climate of Bordeaux for grazing in the winter. And you were explaining to me how some went towards the Madec and others headed over to Entre-deux-Mers, and the wine growers were really happy to see them. So this is explained. This is what they were getting out of it.
Exactly. You know, they were more happy. They are more than happy to receive the shepherds from the Pyrenees during the winter. They paid them to come in their parcels. They nourish them, they host them during the winter because they expect the sheep to deliver the fertilization on the soils. 12,000 of sheep arrived every year 50 years ago in Bordeaux, in Cours-Xavier-Arnozan in Bordeaux.
Which is difficult to imagine today.
So we want to go back to that vision of agriculture, but on our small vineyard, at the size, at the scale of a vineyard of 42 hectares here in Cheval Blanc. But we try to go back to that virtuous circle, which was the vision of agriculture of yesterday.
So about the farm, so you're relying on experts for guidance. And I believe a young woman named Lise Cahuzac runs the farm for you. And I learned that you sent her to Quebec to train with the well-known advocate of market farming, Jean-Martin Fortier. How long was she gone and what did she learn?
Everything in the professional world is a question of expertise. So, of course, we are lucky enough in Cheval Blanc to catch, to meet, to attract some experts on a lot of different subjects, and Jean-Martin is one of those super brilliant experts. And Lise Cahuzac, who ran the farm for us for 2 years, was a trainee like me 20 years ago, was a trainee in Cheval Blanc 10 years ago in the vineyard, then studied enology as well in Cheval Blanc 7 years ago, and then moved to Argentina, where she was in charge of the vineyard for 3 years in Cheval des Andes. And when she came back in France, she wanted to change a little bit the subject of agriculture and stop working for vines and wines. And she wanted to open her own vegetable farm. And we proposed her in Cheval Blanc to do it for us. So she opened a small farm in the heart of Cheval Blanc, in the small place called La Tour du Pin, La Ferme de la Tour du Pin, where she opened a vegetable farm on the basis of the farm of Jean-Martin Fortier in Quebec, which was named La Ferme des Quatre Temps. And the concept is super simple: 50 tons of vegetable, 6 full-time employees, and 3 vision. It should be a way to have a certain rentability. It's socially sustainable and accountable. So the people who work in this farm had to work on the basis of the hour that we expect here in France, and good for the planet and sustainable in terms of practice. So this is the same conviction that we have in the vineyard. So low carbon management of the farm, no plowing of the soils, multiplying biodiversity a lot, working with living soils. And Jean-Martin took the model of the farmer that produce vegetable for Paris in the 19th century, the vegetable border of Paris. So a possibility to produce an enormous amount of vegetable on a small piece of land and in a very sustainable way.
Now, you don't run Cheval Blanc by yourself. You have a large team. How hard has it been to convince the many people who work in the vineyards and in the cellars that this transformation is worthy, meaningful, and possible?
Of course, my job is to transmit this vision, but for sure the vision is collective. This is the key point to understand how we operate here in Cheval Blanc. So I didn't get up one morning deciding to change completely the recipe to produce Cheval Blanc. We decided, we have the inspiration, we have the sensation that, of course, agriculture need to move. As well, we have the sensation slowly, vintage after vintage, that the climatic conditions become warmer and warmer, drier and drier. We had the sensation that the biodiversity everywhere in the world start to decrease, and we had to do something to change that and to change our practice and our methods in the vineyard. So the first thing is we had to work with experts. We had to know before to change. So we need information. We need some examples at work. We need to work with scientists, with experts. So we read a lot of things. We meet a lot of scientists and experts. And slowly we try to find a collective common conviction with the team. Not only me, but the team. Nicolas, our viticulture chief, Carol, our cellar master, Juliette, who is in charge of agroecology and research here in Cheval Blanc. And when our vision became clear, we started to educate, to transmit a certain know-how, a certain knowledge, a lot of information to all the workers who work here in Cheval Blanc. And when they start to become convinced, we can start in the vineyard, but not at the large scale of the vineyard at the beginning. We had to have some result, some positive result at the beginning. So we try on one parcel, one plot. We change the way we manage the working of the soils. We plant few trees. We produce few vegetable, and the year after we have some results. When you seed the soil, 1 year after you have some earthworms, much more. You have less problem with dry situation in the summer. So you can observe and you can measure the impact of your practice. And when you win, you can enlarge, you can scale, you can change the size of your project. And this is super important for us and for the employees. But we should never forget something. This is as well super important for the long-term vision of Château Cheval Blanc. And the long-term vision of Cheval Blanc is the vision of the family of honor. The family Frère and the family Arnaud will be there in 50, in 80, in 120 years, not me. So they need to be convinced about our project. They need to be convinced that they decided to put Cheval Blanc and the destiny of Cheval Blanc in hands of people who know what they do. So we had to do that with results. That's the reason why, once again, science, data, measure, analysis is the earth, the core of our vision here in Cheval Blanc. There is no other option to convince than to prove.
So talking about experts, your team works with scientists from the Museum of Natural History in Paris and University of Bordeaux. Would it be fair to say that what you've undertaken here at Cheval Blanc serves as a real-world experiment for the scientists to study?
Yes, of course, for different reasons. First, there is different level of experimentation. So here in Cheval Blanc for many years, we have some experimentation that we do the fit in the boots. So we try something in the vineyard, we measure, we analyze with our own gray matter.
Well, we have an R&D department here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But with a very operational view and a very pragmatical vision. But this is super important as well, because this is important that we can taste and observe the result of our methods by ourselves. But as well, we have a vision, a vineyard, we have some field where we can experiment super seriously for researcher. For people who produce some science data, who want to have some theses or work in super well-known lab in the world, because they know that when we organize an experimentation, we do it seriously. And they know as well that when we start, we will be there as well in 20 years, in 30 years. So we are here for long term. So we don't want to have all the results for next year. We know that perhaps 1/3 of our result will be next year. 1/3 of our result will be in the next decade. And 1/3 of our result, the trees, for example, will be for 30 or 40 years. So we have time. And we bring the trust to the scientist that it will be correctly done in the vineyard. So we work with a Museum of Natural History in Paris, but as well with INRA, as well with ISVV, with different labs.
So can you give us a couple of examples, the kinds of things they're measuring? What are they looking at?
We're measuring the life in the soil, so could be many different things. We measure the quantity of DNA of myceliums, yeast, bacteria, the ratio between the bacteria and the myceliums. We measure different kind of methods of analysis. We measure the number of earthworms that we have in the soils, the level of organic matter. We measure it for many years, and we have a lot of data that's super interesting to observe the evolution with agroecology as well, concerning the water status of the vines, the sap trajectory, the size of the canopies, the evaporation from the soil, but as well the analysis of the grapes, the diversity of microorganisms we have. underground and on the plants. So we measure, we evaluate, we analyze many different parameters. Some are super technical in the end of scientist lab, and some much more operational, like the phenology, so the time in the year of the bud breaking, the flowering, the veraison, the picking. So we do that for 1 century, so we can continue to register and observe the impact of our practice on that, for example.
Well, I was going to ask you what you discovered so far, but it sounds like you're discovering things all along the way. This is already part of your R&D that's always been at Cheval Blanc, right?
Exactly. And you know, something is super important. When you measure, when you analyze, when you have some data, it's super important to convince the others, but as well, this is super important to observe your mistakes, to register the negative impact of what you built in the vineyard. Because when you change everything, of course, we are sure that the way is the good one to follow. Of course, we are sure, absolutely sure, that we will have much more benefit than drawbacks. But we will have some drawbacks. We will make some mistakes. So we are not stupid enough to think that we have the recipe. We know that we are on the highway to obtain the result we want. But for sure, we will do some mistakes, and we had to correct those mistakes as soon as possible. If we monitor it, if we measure, if we analyze, we will correct that quickly.
I think it's impossible to look at regenerative farming and not discuss climate change. So do you believe, and do the scientists you're working with believe, that this agricultural model will allow us to be more resilient in face of climate change, situations like hotter weather and droughts?
Of course, absolutely. We didn't change our practice. We didn't move to agroecology to adapt our vineyard to climate change. But by chance, the way we had to follow for sustainability and a certain accountable vision of agriculture works as well for the adaptation of climate change. Because when you cover the soil, you have much more biodiversity underground, and you have much more earthworm and so on. But as well, you protect water resources and moisture. As well, you protect the level of organic matter you have in the soil. As well, you help the small quantity of rainfall that we have currently in the summer to be much more efficient in the soils. When you plant some trees, you use the hydraulic pump to take the water deeply in the soils to bring it at the superficial part of the soil. So by chance, we need the same tools for sustainability and adaptation to climate change. But there is something that is super important to keep in mind. It's not a recipe to produce better Cheval Blanc. We produce a good Cheval Blanc because for more than 4 centuries, we have some clever vigneron, some owner with a vision that built on an exceptional terroir, a certain identity that come from through all the details in the vineyard managing. We have a spectacular massal selection of Cabernet Franc. We divided our 42 hectares in 56 plots with 10 different type of soils, the 3 grape variety, many different rootstock, different age of plantation. We bring details in our vision of the vineyard and the winemaking. We have the capacity to vinify everything separately. So we bring details everywhere we can to produce the best Cheval Blanc as possible. Agroecology is only a vision of soils management that we consider as a duty we have for the next generation. But we don't want to have any link between the quality of our wines and the agroecology. We want to produce a spectacular wine, and by the way, which is good for the planet. But I think it's a little bit simple to link the quality of the wines and the practice in the vineyard.
Okay. Now, all this comes at a cost. If Cheval Blanc did not have the deep pockets of LVMH and the Frere family, would this be financially viable, this program?
Of course. 30 years ago, all the vignerons, all the farmers who decided to change their practice are small vineyard, small farmer. So
this is possible on any scale?
This is possible at any scale. The first thing is the duty of Cheval Blanc is to try to build a model that can be multiplied everywhere in the vineyard, everywhere in the farming. We want to bring a certain seriousness in the vision of agroecology, but it's cost nothing. Plowing the soil costs a lot. You need to have a big tractors, you need to have a big machine, you need to have a lot of employees who plow the soil during all the year. Using cover crops, you seed the soils after the picking, and after you had just to roll it correctly. So the costs are not at the same place. When you are conventional, your cost is in machine, investment, chemicals, mineral fertilizer. When you are in agroecology, you put the same cost on human time, on the observation of the vineyard. You put your cost in the living stock, in fact. So even if it's cost you the same, it's only where you put your money.
Well, so I was going to ask you what the biggest investment is, but it sounds like it's more the cost it's just done differently.
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Taking time to explain to our employees what we expect from them, to change the vision we have on the soils and the agriculture. At the end of the day, of course, we can say, you are Cheval Blanc, you can. I just answer, because we can, we must. If all the people in the world who can change the world try to change it, it's quite good news for all of us.
Were there ever a time when you didn't think it might not be financially viable? Were there ever moments where you thought, ooh, maybe this shift, because it's when you're making this sort of transformation at an estate, as you say, it's over the long term. Did you ever think like, wow, this is going to maybe more difficult than I thought?
Plowing the soils, pesticides, mineral fertilizer cost a lot. So everywhere you use polyculture as methods of farming, it will be more resilient for the soil and the planet, but more resilient financially. In the past, when you were in polyculture, it was as well to diversify your money, because when the vineyard was frost, you have the vegetable and the fruit to pay the salary. So in a way, we had to remove massive agriculture and to replace it by a massive number of farmers. We need much more people in the field, and believe me, it's a pleasure to work in the field, because every morning our employees park their car in Cheval Blanc with an enormous smile, because they have the sensation that they do something to build a better world.
So have other wine estates come to see what you're doing? Do you think you're inspiring them?
Alors, yes, of course, we hope that we inspire a little bit other wine growers. But in fact, the only thing that we want to leave in the mind of all the farmer, all the wine grower of the world is the health of our soil is the key to our future. This is something super important, because we don't want to teach to the other. We are not pretentious enough to think that we have the recipe and we had to convince everybody. And who are we to tell that? We just want to bring a small vision, which is, look at your soil. This is your treasury. look at your soil. This is the black gold of the future. You know, I love the sentence of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, the writer of Le Petit Prince, who said, "We don't own the land, we lend it to the next generation." So we have a duty because a lot of people think that the way we manage our field is okay today. Look at the brilliant wines that we produce. Look at the quantity of meat, of vegetable and fruit that we have on the planet. But we can't obtain that result by borrowing the quality of food of our children. We have a duty to prepare an agriculture that will nourish correctly the humanity tomorrow. So a farmer should not look at what happened this year. A farmer should look at the next generation. This is our duty, and this is what we try to do.
So if someone were thinking of embarking on a similar plan of action, what advice would you give them?
Do it right now. Don't wait. Have no fear to change because this is super easy. This is super pleasant. The journey is long, but there is not a lot of difficulties day to day, and we need to change our practice as soon as possible. We should not wait to have 100% of the recipe. We like Marc-André Sellos said, we discover a touch of the notice of humanity. We had to apply the few things that is right on the paper. So we can't wait anymore. We had to change, even if we don't know everything. We know that this is the right way to follow. So change as soon as possible, and change at your own level, at your own size.
Do the bits you can do.
Exactly.
And even that's already better than what you did yesterday,
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Better is good.
So the wines, my last question for you, the wines of Cheval Blanc have an identity. How much of what you're doing has to do with preserving the identity of Cheval Blanc and the wines it produces?
100% of what we do is to preserve identity. 100% of our job is dedicated to the identity. We don't think in Cheval Blanc that our focus should be on the quality. When you sell a bottle of wine at the price of Cheval Blanc, the wine is good, of course. So the notion of identity is much more important. I'm not paid to produce the best wine of Bordeaux. I'm paid to produce the best Cheval Blanc as possible. So 100% of what we do is dedicated to the identity of Château Cheval Blanc. To preserve the identity of Cheval Blanc, 30 years ago, the previous team of winemakers need to find a way to obtain a certain level of maturity when the climatic condition was difficult. The challenge of my generation of winemakers is to slow down the maturity and to preserve a certain freshness. So you can imagine that I don't use the same methods and the same recipe. So we change everything to preserve Cheval Blanc. We change our methods. We change our view. We change our vision of the vines, of the wines, to preserve the most important asset that we have, which is the terroir and the style of Cheval Blanc, with freshness, balance, elegance, length, and so on. So, of course, if we don't change anything, Cheval Blanc will be dead. So we change everything to preserve. This is our duty and our focus day to day.
Thank you so much. This has been so interesting. It's been fascinating to hear about your journey you're on here. It's really admirable and it's inspiring. So thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
That's a pleasure. Thank you for coming, and up to.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. No, he doesn't.
Thank you for joining us. And just a reminder that you can find all of our episodes direct on the website, along with tasting notes, articles, reports, the latest news, or just head directly to wherever you get your podcast normally. And let us know how you enjoy it.